Pooh Shiesty versus The Deal. Pooh Shiesty built a career that made millions of people pay attention. But now the biggest question surrounding his name is not about a song, a feature, or even a chart position. It is about who controls the career when the artist himself cannot. According to the allegations and claims described in this story, what began as a relationship between one of Southern rap's most influential label bosses and one of Memphis's hottest young rappers eventually turned into a bitter dispute involving contracts, royalties, ownership, and a federal criminal case. Gucci Mane once appeared to be the man helping Pooh Shiesty turn street-level momentum into national success. Through 1,017 records, Shiesty gained a bigger platform, major visibility, and a business structure capable of pushing his music far beyond Memphis. But success changes the value of everything around an artist. Every major stream, every feature, every viral record, and every new fan can make a catalog more valuable. And once real money starts moving, the details buried inside a recording agreement suddenly become much more important. Who owns the masters? How are royalties calculated? What gets recouped first? And most importantly, how difficult is it for an artist to leave when the relationship no longer feels like the same partnership that existed at the beginning? That is where this story becomes much bigger than ordinary label drama. Federal prosecutors have accused Pooh Shiesty and others of involvement in an alleged confrontation connected to the business dispute. Shiesty has pleaded not guilty, meaning those accusations must remain allegations unless proven in court. But while the legal battle continues, another part of the story keeps moving: the music. The sample describes Shiesty's album reaching major attention while he remained in custody, creating an almost unbelievable contradiction. The artist is restricted, the catalog is still working, the label structure is still operating, and people around Shiesty are publicly questioning where the money is going. So this is not just a story about Gucci Mane versus Pooh Shiesty. It is a story about power, because when an artist becomes valuable enough, the most important battle may not happen on a record. It may happen inside the contract controlling the record. Where are you watching from right now? Drop your city in the comments. If you believe artists should understand every part of their contracts before the money gets serious, come on, If you think label relationships become most dangerous when trust disappears, come on, dude, and subscribe to the channel. Because the deeper we go into this story, the more complicated the money, loyalty, and control become. How Gucci Mane built 1017. Before the money questions, the courtroom pressure, and the collapse in trust, there was a partnership that looked almost perfect on paper. Gucci Mane had already spent years building himself into one of the most important figures in Southern rap. He helped shape the sound that would eventually dominate trap music, survived public setbacks, rebuilt his career, and then turned his attention towards something even more powerful than being an artist: finding the next generation. That became the foundation of 1017 records. Gucci's greatest advantage was not just money or industry access. It was his ability to recognize artists who already had something labels could not manufacture: voice, presence, local credibility, a fan base that existed before the paperwork. Instead of creating personalities from scratch, 1017 looked for artists who already felt real and then gave them a larger machine. Pooh Shiesty fit that formula almost perfectly. Coming out of Memphis, his voice was immediately recognizable. The delivery was aggressive, sharp, and impossible to confuse with anybody else. His music already had energy behind it before the relationship with 1017 became a major part of his career. Once Gucci Mane put the label's infrastructure behind him, that regional momentum started turning into something national. And that is where the relationship became valuable for both sides. For Pooh Shiesty, 1017 could provide distribution, promotion, connections, features, industry relationships, and a level of visibility that takes independent artists years to build. For Gucci Mane, Pooh represented something equally important: an artist whose music could become a major commercial asset. Every successful artist signed to a label creates two stories at the same time. The first story is public. The fans see songs, videos, chart Deposition, features, interviews, and sold-out shows. The second story happens behind paperwork, advances, royalty percentages, master rights, recoupment, option, ownership. Those details rarely become interesting while everybody is winning. They become extremely interesting when trust disappears, because the bigger Pooh Shiesty became, the more valuable the music became, and the more valuable the music became, the more consequential every sentence inside that recording agreement became. That is where this story begins changing. The partnership that once looked like a launchpad was eventually described in the source material as something Pooh Shiesty wanted to escape. And once an artist believes the contract underneath his success is working against him, every dollar coming in can start feeling less like proof of victory and more like proof of how much control somebody else has. Chapter 3. When Pooh Shiesty became too valuable to ignore, success makes everything louder. When Pooh Shiesty first joined the 1017 system, the relationship could be viewed through the simplest possible lens. A rising Memphis rapper, connecting with an established Southern rap legend, who had the infrastructure to take his career further. But once the numbers grow, simplicity disappears. Every major stream increases catalog value. Every high-profile feature increases leverage. Every viral moment tells the industry there may be years of revenue attached to that artist's name. And once that happens, the contract is no longer just paperwork from the beginning of the journey. It becomes the document deciding how the rewards from that journey are divided, according to the narrative presented in the source. Tension eventually centered around some of the most sensitive subjects in the record business: royalties, ownership, control, and Pooh Shiesty's desire to leave the 1017 arrangement. Those are not small disagreements. A rapper can have millions of listeners and still have very little control over the recordings creating those streams. A song can generate money across platforms, while the artist waits for accounting statements. A successful catalog can be worth enormous sums, while the person whose voice built it remains subject to recoupment, contractual deductions, or rights structures negotiated years earlier. That is what makes artist-label disputes so complicated. The public sees fame. The artist may see obligations. The label sees an investment. The family may see money they believe should already be arriving. And everybody can believe they are the one being treated unfairly. For Pooh Shiesty, the stakes became especially intense because his value was rising, while his ability to personally control the business around that value became increasingly limited. That combination is dangerous, even before criminal allegations enter the story. The more successful the artist becomes, the more expensive separation can become. The more valuable the catalog becomes, the less incentive either side may have to walk away cheaply. That is why disputes over contracts can become emotionally explosive. It is not just about percentages on a page. It can feel like ownership of years of work, identity, reputation, and future earning power. According to the source material, that tension eventually reached a point where a normal business disagreement was no longer the center of the story. The conversation moved from lawyers and contracts to allegations of something far more serious. And from that moment forward, the relationship between Pooh Shiesty and the 1017 structure would never be viewed the same way again. Chapter 4. When business turned into a federal case, this is the point where the story has to be told carefully. The source material describes a January 2026 confrontation at a recording studio in Dallas, and says federal prosecutors later accused Pooh Shiesty and multiple other defendants of involvement in kidnapping and extortion-related conduct connected to the contract dispute. Those are allegations. Pooh Shiesty has been described in the source as pleading not guilty, which means the accusations should not be treated as proven facts before they are established in court. But even as allegations, the details described in the case changed the entire temperature of the story. According to prosecutors as presented in the source, multiple people were allegedly involved in the studio confrontation. The source says firearms were allegedly present and that there was an attempt to force the signing of paperwork connected to Pooh Shiesty's recording relationship. The source also describes prosecutors claiming they have multiple forms of evidence, including video footage, location data, vehicle records, and other documentation. At the same time, it says the defense has challenged aspects of the evidence and is preparing for a future trial. That distinction matters. A YouTube headline can make everything sound settled in 10 seconds. A courtroom does not work that way. Evidence gets challenged. Witnesses get questioned. Legal theories get tested. And allegations that sound overwhelming in an indictment still have to survive the actual judicial process. But from a career perspective, the damage begins long before a verdict. The moment an artist becomes attached to a major federal case, every business relationship changes. Labels become cautious. Brands disappear. Touring becomes uncertain. Releases become harder to manage. The artist's legal strategy starts competing with the music strategy. And if the artist is detained, somebody else has to make decisions while the legal battle continues. That is what makes this situation so unusual. The criminal allegations did not stop the music business from moving. The source describes Pooh Shiesty sitting in custody, while the catalog connected to his name remained commercially active. So now two systems were moving at the same time. The legal system was asking whether serious criminal allegations could be proven. The music industry was asking how to continue monetizing an artist whose future was suddenly uncertain. And somewhere between those two systems sat the exact thing that helped create the conflict in the first place. The contract. Chapter 5. The contract he allegedly tried to escape. Here is the irony at the center of the entire story. According to the source, the dispute was connected to Pooh Shiesty wanting out of the 1017 relationship. But even after the confrontation described by prosecutors, the contract did not simply disappear. That is because contract law does not work like an argument between two people where somebody signs a piece of paper and the problem is over. If paperwork is allegedly signed under coercion or that creates an entirely different legal issue. A document created under those conditions is not automatically treated like a normal voluntary business agreement. So, according to the source's framing, the very action, allegedly intended to end the relationship, may have failed to produce a legally effective termination. That creates an almost unbelievable outcome. The artist wants out. The business relationship becomes the center of a federal case, and yet the commercial structure tied to that relationship keeps operating. That is what makes leverage so important in the music business. Artists often think leverage means popularity. Labels think leverage means contractual rights. Lawyers think leverage means what can actually be enforced. Fans think leverage means public support. Those are four completely different things. Pooh Shiesty could have enormous fan loyalty and still face restrictions created by a deal signed years earlier. 1017 could face public criticism and still maintain contractual rights if the agreement remained legally enforceable. And that is why emotional decisions become so dangerous when major money is involved. If an artist believes a deal is unfair, the safest weapons are lawyers, accounting audits, negotiation, litigation, and time. Those options can feel painfully slow. But the alternative can turn a business problem into something far larger than the contract itself. That is exactly what the source says happened here. Instead of one dispute, the story now contained two. First, who controls the music? Second, what happened during the alleged confrontation surrounding that control? And while those questions remained unresolved, the catalog did something nobody could ignore. It kept generating attention. Then came the development that made the entire situation even more complicated. The music did not stop. According to the source, it reached #1. Chapter 6. A #1 album from behind bars. Imagine reaching one of the biggest milestones of your career and being unable to stand in the room when it happens. According to the source material, All Eyes on Shiesty was released through the existing label structure, while Pooh Shiesty remained in custody, and the project climbed to the top of Apple Music. That creates an image almost too strange for fiction. The artist is confined. The music is everywhere. Fans are streaming. The label machine is moving. And the person whose name is on the project cannot personally control the rollout in the way a free artist normally would. For most rappers, a major debut album is supposed to be a celebration. Interviews, release parties, performances, video shoots, social media, fan interaction, tour planning. Every part of the moment is designed to turn attention into the next opportunity. But incarceration changes the economics of attention. The artist cannot easily sit in meetings, cannot freely travel, cannot jump into a studio whenever inspiration hits, cannot independently respond to every business decision. Suddenly, managers, lawyers, family members, and the label become much more important. That makes trust the most valuable currency in the entire operation. And according to the source, trust had already collapsed. That is what made the reported chart success so loaded. Instead of simply asking, how big can this album become? The audience immediately had another question: who benefits from it? The fact that an album performs strongly does not automatically mean cash immediately appears in an artist's personal account. Revenue can move through distributors, labels, recoupment systems, publishing structures, producer obligations, and contractual splits before artist royalties become payable. But most fans do not think about that machinery. They see number one. They imagine money, then they see the artist incarcerated, and they ask where the money went. According to the source, that question became explosive when members of Pooh Shiesty's family and camp began making public claims about what they believed was or was not being paid. At that point, the album stopped being only a commercial project. It became evidence in the court of public opinion. Every stream became symbolic. Every chart screenshot raised another question. Every celebration was shadowed by the same contradiction. Pooh Shiesty's music was moving higher, while Pooh Shiesty himself had almost no freedom to move at all. Chapter 7. Who actually gets the money? This is where hip-hop drama collides with music industry math. Fans often assume that if an album is successful, the artist must immediately be receiving large royalty checks. That is not necessarily how record deals work. Streaming platforms generate revenue through subscriptions and advertising. That money is distributed through rights holders and distribution structures, depending on the deal. Payments may move through a distributor or major partner before reaching the label. The label then accounts to the artist according to the recording agreement, and that agreement can change everything. Before an artist receives certain royalties, a label may be entitled to recoup approved costs, advances, recording expenses, video budgets, marketing, promotion, other expenses defined in the agreement. That means an album can generate meaningful revenue while the artist's royalty account still shows a balance that has not yet recouped. The source itself acknowledges something important. It does not provide the full public contract between Pooh Shiesty and 1017. That means we cannot responsibly claim exactly what percentage belongs to him, exactly what has been recouped, or exactly what payment is currently owed. Those details matter. A family saying, "We have not received money," is different from a verified audit demonstrating that the artist was contractually owed a specific payment that was improperly withheld. Both can become major stories, but they are not the same claim. And that distinction is critical. The broader problem is that incarcerated artists operate from a massive disadvantage. They cannot freely walk into the label office. They cannot sit beside accountants whenever they want. They cannot instantly review every statement or demand a meeting on 24 hours notice. They depend heavily on representatives. That turns transparency into survival. If the artist trusts the team, the system can continue. If the artist does not trust the team, every payment delay looks suspicious. Every accounting decision looks personal. Every successful stream becomes another reason to believe somebody else is benefiting. That is the environment described in the source. A commercially active catalog, an incarcerated artist, an existing label relationship, a family questioning the money, and a public that sees enormous numbers without seeing the contract underneath them. That is why the real battle may not be over whether money exists. The real battle is over what the paperwork says should happen to it. Chapter 8. The family goes public. Once family enters a business dispute, the story changes emotionally. According to the source material, Pooh Shiesty's mother publicly claimed that the family had not received money from the earnings connected to her son's music. That allegation spread because it contains a contradiction the internet instantly understands. The music is successful. The artist is locked up. The family says they are not seeing the money. Whether the full accounting eventually supports that accusation is a separate question. The source does not provide the underlying contract, royalty statements, recoupment balances, or independent audit necessary to prove the precise financial picture. But public perception does not wait for an audit. It moves on emotion, and a mother saying her incarcerated son's work is generating attention while the family is not seeing financial benefit is exactly the type of statement that can change how fans view a label overnight. Now Gucci Mane is no longer seen only as the mentor who helped launch Pooh Shiesty. He becomes, in the eyes of critics, Part of the business structure they believe is controlling the catalog. That does not automatically make the criticism legally correct, but it makes the tension real. The source also describes messages circulating from people aligned with Pooh Shiesty's camp and claims of frustration surrounding the situation. It additionally discusses reports and rumors about activity near Gucci Mane's property. Those claims need to remain exactly what they are: reports and allegations unless independently established, because this is where storytelling can become irresponsible very quickly. A rumor repeated enough times starts sounding like evidence. A social media post gets converted into a source, then another channel cites the first channel, and suddenly nobody remembers where the claim actually began. The financial dispute is dramatic enough without turning unverified street rumors into facts. What can be said from the source's own narrative is that the trust between the two sides appears completely broken. One side is connected to a label structure still associated with the music. The other side is publicly questioning whether the artist is benefiting from that success. And Pooh Shiesty himself is described as being in a position where his ability to directly manage that conflict is severely limited. That is what makes the situation so emotionally charged. The louder his music becomes outside the walls, the more powerless he may appear inside them. And that leads to the biggest question of the entire story. Who is actually controlling Pooh Shiesty's career now? Chapter 9. Who controls Pooh Shiesty's career now? At this point, the story is no longer simply Pooh Shiesty versus Gucci Mane. It is artist versus circumstance, contract versus emotion, catalog value versus personal freedom, and public perception versus what can actually be proven. According to the source, Pooh Shiesty remains tied to an existing business structure while facing serious legal allegations that he denies. His music can still generate streams, his name can still create attention, the label can continue operating, family members can speak publicly, fans can choose sides. But the artist at the center of all of it has the least freedom to move. That is the deepest irony. Pooh Shiesty became valuable because people wanted his voice. Now everybody else can speak around that voice, while his own ability to control the conversation is restricted. The label has contractual infrastructure, the lawyers have legal strategy, the family has emotional pressure, the fans have social media, the courts have the power to determine his legal future, and Pooh Shiesty has a catalog whose value does not stop simply because his life has become complicated. That is what makes ownership and control different. You can be the face of the music without controlling every right attached to it. You can create the song without controlling every dollar generated by the master. You can have millions of fans and still need lawyers to determine what your contract allows. Fame looks like power from outside. Contracts reveal where the power actually sits. And whatever ultimately happens between Pooh Shiesty, the financial claims, and the federal allegations described in the source, this story already offers one brutal lesson for every young rapper watching. The paperwork matters before the fame arrives, because once the song explodes, the contract becomes more expensive to fight. Once millions of dollars are potentially attached to the catalog, every disagreement becomes harder. And once a business dispute becomes personal enough to spill beyond attorneys and negotiations, the artist can lose something far more valuable than royalties. He can lose the ability to control his future. That is why the biggest question going into the final chapter is not simply whether Pooh Shiesty gets paid, whether Gucci Mane responds, or what happens with the legal case. The bigger question is what young artists can learn before they ever reach this point. Because money can be recovered, contracts can sometimes be renegotiated, business relationships can end, but years of freedom, damaged trust, and decisions made in moments of anger can carry a price that no #1 album can ever fully repay. Money, loyalty, and the lesson for young artists. The biggest lesson in the Pooh Shiesty and 1017 story is not about choosing a side, it is about understanding how quickly talent, money, loyalty, and emotion can become dangerous when nobody trusts the system holding them together. According to the source material, this relationship began with opportunity. Gucci Mane had the platform, the experience, and the infrastructure. Pooh Shiesty brought the voice, the momentum, and the audience. Together, that combination helped turn a Memphis rapper into one of the most recognizable names connected to 1017. But once the catalog became more valuable, The questions surrounding ownership, royalties, control, and the ability to leave the deal became more serious. That is the strategic lesson every young artist should understand before signing anything. Do not wait until the hit record arrives to understand your contract. Know who owns the masters. Know how recoupment works. Know what expenses can be charged against your royalties. Know how long the agreement lasts. What options the label controls. And what happens if either side wants out. And most importantly, have independent legal representation before the relationship becomes emotional. Because anger is one of the worst negotiators in the music business. If an artist believes money is missing, there are audits. If a contract feels unfair, there are attorneys, negotiations, lawsuits, and structured exits. Those paths can be slow and frustrating, but they protect something more valuable than a royalty check: freedom, career longevity, and the possibility of rebuilding. The criminal allegations described in this story remain allegations unless proven in court, and Pooh Shiesty has been described as pleading not guilty. The financial claims from his family also should not be treated as proven accounting facts without the underlying contract and statements. But regardless of how those disputes are ultimately resolved, the broader warning is already clear. A #1 album cannot give back lost years. A viral moment cannot repair every broken relationship. And no catalog is valuable enough to justify decisions that could permanently damage a life. The strongest move for any artist is not proving who is tougher. It is building enough knowledge, discipline, and ownership that nobody can easily control the future they work to create. If you believe young artists should learn the business before chasing the fame, come on. If you believe independent lawyers and transparent contracts could prevent situations like this from escalating, come on, dude. Like the video. Share it with somebody trying to enter the music industry. And subscribe to the channel for more stories about the money, power, contracts, and decisions shaping hip-hop behind the scenes.